Good evening, everybody, and welcome into Tennessee Volunteers Live. I'm Tucker Harlan alongside Jordan Binkley. We are proud to be premiering Tennessee Volunteers Live tonight. It's the inaugural edition of the show. Jordan, so glad to be doing this with you, man.
I'm glad to be here with you too. I'm excited to see how it goes.
We're stumbling out of the gates here. Had some audio issues there, but nothing like a little troubleshooting on day one. But really, really nice to be back behind a mic once again here on Voice of College Football. We ask that you like, share, and subscribe on our YouTube channel, Tennessee Voice of College Football. And yeah, let's get straight into it because believe it or not, there is a football game being played at Neyland Stadium this weekend. And it's not against an opponent that's not Tennessee, but it's spring football. And we love that here. We love getting to see the young kids play. And it's a good opportunity to take the family out in Neyland Stadium and see some players that you haven't seen before.
Yeah, and I'm definitely excited to see what Tennessee has to offer this Saturday. There's a lot of players that I'm interested in personally. One thing that I'm interested in seeing if Boo Carter will be getting any reps on offense. How likely do you think that is, and what do you expect from that on Saturday?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. It's something that we were talking a little bit about once the transfer portal opened up. That was one of the conditions in which Boo wanted to stay here, that he could play on offense. I think it's very much a possibility, something that you could see with him. And it's in a similar way in which you saw it with D. Williams a couple years back, although you really only saw that in one game against UConn. It's just like, okay, let's get him in here in garbage time and just do that. But I don't think that's going to be the case this time around. I think you're going to see more reps out of him on offense. And it should be really interesting to watch because he's proven to be a Swiss Army knife. This year, he's going to be more of a returner as well than he was last season. So looking forward to seeing all that at the spring game, which I want your take on this, Jordan. Are we entering a time in college football in which these things are now endangered species? Because it kind of feels like it. You're starting to see all these schools cancel their spring games, places like Nebraska, Texas, not Tennessee, the other UT. Of course, Ole Miss, it used, I guess it's still called the Grove Bowl, but it's pretty much just this extravaganza of like dunk contests. And I think there was a hot dog eating contest last year in Vaught Hemingway Stadium in the spring. So it's not what it used to be. How many more of these things do we have left here in Neyland Stadium?
I mean, I feel like a spring game will still exist, but will it be the spring games that took place like 15 years ago? I'm not so sure about that. I mean, I think when Butch Jones was here, I'm pretty sure that Tennessee did like some oddball kind of point system.
I think that's right. I forget what it was exactly, but that sounds right. It sounds like Butch Jones.
Yeah, like I don't even know if they did it more than a year, but I was very confused about that during the time. And, like the headlines that came out saying that Deion Sanders was considering like playing against another school, which, I mean, I like that idea, but injuries and everything like that. I mean, injuries are bound to happen even when playing against your own team, but you would like to think that they would be a little bit more hands off than another team, especially if you have to play them later in the year, like depending on whatever opponent it would be.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, I don't know where this idea started exactly of playing another opponent in spring games, because Deion Sanders obviously mentioned it. It was not his idea first. I don't know if it was media that came out with this. I forget if another coach did it or whatnot, just like, Tennessee scheduling UT Martin or somebody to come in here for the spring game and then just do that. But there's several reasons that coaches don't want to do this. And I think they're all very logical reasons, you could say, because you think about injuries, right? And they happen in spring games too, even when you're playing against yourself. Ethan Davis had, I believe it was a shoulder injury a couple years back in the 23 spring game. So that was obviously less than ideal. But of course, as a football player now, I haven't played football in almost 10 years, but I know the feeling. You want to hit people in other jerseys. and you want to cause them pain. You don't want that in a spring game if you're a coach, if you're especially one of these FCS schools, you don't want that at all. And then another thing too, with the way the portal works now and having a spring window in the transfer portal is you've got guys that SEC schools could potentially be interested in on some of these FCS teams, and that's a method of poaching, tampering potentially that is at their disposal. So I'm obviously we haven't seen this happen before, but if you were to come up with this idea and then let it play out, then you could see some poaching going on out of the transfer portal because you hosted this other team for a spring game.
Yeah, and I didn't even consider that when I heard about that, but that's actually a good point, especially like if it is like an FCS school and it's like one of the guys that may have like played at Auburn and then like transferred to like a school like North Texas or UTEP or something like that. If you have them for your spring game, I mean, and one of the guys used to be like a 4-star recruit that just winded up there. I mean, why not consider going to a bigger school where like you could showcase your skills? So, I mean, that's an interesting thing I didn't think of, but let me tell you let me ask you what you think about this. What if this did become a thing and spring games were played against other opponents? What do you think about backups and like freshmen only playing and like sitting the starters?
Well, that would not be a bad idea. I guess if they were to play out, hypothetically speaking, of course. But I'm still not too keen on it though, just because again, you could potentially poach somebody and get them up in your program. And the way things are now too, and I didn't mention this earlier, but there is this willingness to keep things secret and under wraps for football coaches now, especially in the age of social media. Like, you can only film so much in a Tennessee football practice. That's just how it is, right? Like, you don't want to have a situation where, let's just say Tennessee has this great wide receiver and he's just dicing up all these corners in practice, and he's running these terrific routes and making these incredible catches, and then just out of nowhere, one of Kirby Smart's grad assistant minions stumbles upon it, and he's got a perfect strategy for it. You don't want that anymore, and that's part of it too with the spring games. Is like, and it goes hand in hand with the poaching, right? Like, and I think that's also part of the reason why we saw Nebraska cancel theirs, or at least something Matt Rule mentioned, right? Like, you just don't want things to get out there on the internet, and then other coaches have that as a point of strategy, I guess you could say. So I'm not for that. I think it's an interesting idea, but I just don't think I'd want to see that play out in spring games.
That's a good point with as far as like film and stuff goes. I mean, you don't want to give too much to your opponents, especially, like before the season even starts. The only reason why I thought it could be a good idea is because, like, say David Sanders has to start for Tennessee this season and he's coming in as a freshman. It's going to be awfully hard for a guy coming straight out of high school to be able to block like 6'6", 275-pound defensive ends every single week. So to get him ready for competition, that's like players like him, that's where I was kind of thinking. But then again, like you said, with film, you don't really want to show too much on paper. You want to keep some things a secret. But that's just my thoughts on that.
Yeah. So obviously spring games are changing up, and there could potentially be more solutions to a spring game here in the near future that we've not thought of. Maybe more people just want to go the route of Ole Miss and have like an end of spring ball celebration type thing as opposed to an actual game, which again, for the injury's sake, that's more often than not a good thing. The orange and white game has changed a considerable amount here in the last 4 or 5 seasons. And I don't just say that because they do charge for you to get into the game now. You have to pay $10. It's no longer free like it once was. And not to say $10 is an expensive ticket necessarily, but it kind of takes away some of the, I don't know, magic of the spring game that you used to have, and just looking also too at just some of the things that have happened here in recent years with the spring game as well. Like in did they? I guess they just didn't do one in 2020,
Yeah,
and
I can't recall one in 2020.
yeah, I don't recall one in 2020. 2021, it was obviously limited attendance. 22, I think it was closed off because of some kind of renovations. I forget what exactly it was.
Hmm.
The 2023, I think, was pretty normal, and then 24, it was limited attendance too because Neyland obviously had more renovations to be done. Actually, I know for a fact that they did not do a normal one in 22 because that was when they built the party deck and all uh, those big money seats down there on the Tennessee sidelines. So this will be one of just two at least standard orange and white games, I guess you could say, in the last 5 years. They just haven't looked the same from one year to the next, just for a variety of circumstances.
Yeah, and I don't know how it is for you, but I remember when I was a kid, I used to look forward to going to the orange and white game. It's cheaper than other games. Like, not always have enough money to go all the way out to Knoxville because I'm from the Nashville area. So driving all the way out to Knoxville, going to the games and stuff wasn't always a possibility growing up. So being able to go to the spring game was always something I looked forward to, like meeting the players, all of that, just like spending a whole day in Knoxville. And like you brought up a good point with like charging money. I mean, that could deter some other people that, maybe want to see Tennessee play, but they can't necessarily afford it. And like you said, like $10 isn't a lot to everybody, but I mean, it's still something. And I don't know. I think spring games are just a special place for fans to just gather and to get excited for the season. So I hope that they don't go away for that sake. I mean, even if they have to play like two-hand touch or something, you still want something to be out there, some kind of celebration, something to look forward to during the off season, especially when things start to die down.
Yeah, a family of five would have to pay $50 to get into the game, which is a little more expensive than what it used to be. In fact, it's way more expensive to most people. It's just it's different, and it's part of this whole narrative of pricing out the common fan that we've got around college athletics right now. It's not just a Tennessee thing, but of course, this year you have the price hike on tickets um, in every sport now. It's not just football, and it's in anticipation of revenue sharing. It's just all about the changing landscape that we've got in college athletics at this point. So different times we're living in for sure.
Yeah, and those ticket prices have gotten crazy because I remember in 2022 when Hendon Hooker was leading Tennessee and the thought was that Tennessee could possibly play in the national championship. I was monitoring the tickets for that like every single week, trying to see what the price is going to be. And it was like the cheapest ticket was around like $600. And then, of course, I was checking this season too, and I was seeing tickets were like the cheapest ones were like $1,400. And it's like doubling in prices. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
You and I are both young guys, so we remember the days in which there were not full crowds in Neyland Stadium. Not that older folks don't, but it's just what we grew up in, and it's not what they know. I mean, they've seen the good days, and they're seeing them again now. The good days have just started for those of us who watched Tennessee football for our entire lives that were born in the 2000s.
Yeah, for sure. And then like with the prices increasing, it's becoming harder to get to these games. It's almost like it's worth getting the season tickets because I mean, even if you're wanting like a seat really far back, I mean, you're still gonna have to drop $200+. I mean, 150 maybe at the very least, and like that's not affordable for everybody. But I mean, when you have a team that's playing good like Tennessee has in the past couple of years, I mean, they're gonna sell out no matter what. So I mean, they could probably write any price they wanted to and still sell out the games because Tennessee fans are just that passionate about their team. But it's definitely a trend that I am not excited for.
Uh, just thinking, the weather on Saturday is not exactly looking pristine. It's high of 56 and cloudy, which is, I don't know. I mean, I'm not really a huge fan of chillier weather this time of year, especially for spring football games. Like, I want to say last year it was really, really hot for the game, and then maybe even the year before that.
Yeah, the
So,
the most of the times I've went, it's been like scorching hot. So, I mean, that's an interesting thing. I mean, I don't know how much of effect it'll have out there, but I mean, if it's windy out there, at least we could see if Tennessee's kickers are doing good during the game.
yeah, yeah. Will be an interesting challenge for Max Gilbert and company if it is windy on Saturday. And with that, we can go ahead and get into the game itself. Of course, you got the orange and white teams, and then you'll see different quarterbacks playing for each of those teams. This year, you'll obviously have Nico playing in it. You'll have Jake Merklinger, and you'll have George McIntyre all playing quarterback. And of those three, Jordan, who are you most interested to watch on Saturday?
Well, honestly, I'm excited to see Merklinger because I feel like I haven't heard much of him in a minute, and just sitting around there. I think it would be nice to get to see him play, especially because who was a backup last year? I'm forgetting his name.
Gaston.
Gaston Moore,
Gas
yes.
pipe.
Gas pipe, yes. I remember that he was getting reps a lot, and I was like, okay, that's great. But we Tennessee fans know that he's probably never going to get on the field and be a starter. So it would have been nice to see Jake Merklinger last season. So that's probably who I'm excited about the most. And I think McIntyre would be pretty good too. I mean, I was fortunate enough to see him in high school when he was playing for Brentwood Academy, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Brentwood Academy. I saw him play, and he looked pretty good. Like, I mean, when I played high school football, I don't know how it was for you, but I mean, teams didn't throw very much. Like, you would just try to find a stud running back and feed it to him like 40 plus times a game and maybe rotate another back in. But he was slinging the ball out there and looked pretty good. And I think he was a sophomore or junior in high school during
That
that
sounds
time.
right. Yeah.
And it was pretty impressive. And, he's got the height and everything. I mean, of course, he needs to put on some weight and everything. But, I mean, he looks like he can be a really good quarterback.
Yeah, and I got to see him once on TV. Of course, I don't live in Nashville anymore, but like Jordan, I am from the Nashville area. So actually went to high school just down the street from Brentwood Academy at Brentwood High School. But he's going to have that same growth that Nico needed when he got here. He's going to have to put on some pounds just to be able to take some of those hits from these big SEC defensive linemen. But he's got kind of a similar skill set. He can move around in the pocket. It feels like his best game is when he is out there just improvising, making backyard plays, as we say. And that is one I'm looking forward to seeing on Saturday from him. And this is a guy, too, that just really gets it as well, right? His uncle is Mike McIntyre, who was formerly the coach at Colorado and then Florida International most recently. So the family's been around the game for a while, and that's a guy that really understands college football and was really, really excited too to get here because he's an in-state kid. It's more special for some of these kids that come in-state than others, and it's something that we're going to get to see with him and get to see him live out that dream. So looking forward to that with McIntyre. And then you mentioned Merklinger as well, and I really want to see what he's got because with the recruitment of all these quarterbacks now in the Heupel system, you have the chance now to see, I don't say this to be offensive, but like forgotten middle children. And McIntyre could become one of these too with Faison coming in. It's entirely possible. But from what I've seen just in gameplay, and keep in mind, it was Chattanooga and Kent State, so it's not like he's going against SEC level competition. I guess I just heard it on the way back from the Chattanooga game. I left that game early because it was scorching hot, but he did pretty well in that game. And I guess he got in, late first half, early second half against Kent State, and I liked what I saw from him. Another guy who's, he's not as tall as McIntyre or Nico, but he's a guy that can move around and make some plays with his feet, and that's an exciting element that can be added to this offense.
Yeah, and it's good that he's been like sitting in the locker room too, waiting and learning. I mean, because it's going to be interesting to see who replaces Nico when it's said and done. I mean, because like you said, McIntyre's there sitting on the team, and then Faison's coming. I mean, that's gonna be a crowded quarterback room, and I'm sure at least one of them is going to transfer out. So it's gonna be interesting to see who's going to be battling for that second spot in spring for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned transfers. Tennessee pretty light haul on transfers this offseason, just 4 of them, all on the offensive end. You got Star Thomas at running back, who I guess figures to be the successor. He'll have a little bit of a competition with Deshaun Bishop, but he did really well at Duke last season under Manny Diaz in his first year on that job. You got Amari Jefferson transferring in from Alabama, who was committed to Tennessee for baseball, actually, and then decommitted and went to Alabama for football instead. Not sure how much of a factor he'll be this season. And then the other 2 are up front, Wendell Moy and Sam Pendleton, 2 guys who do not let defensive linemen touch their quarterbacks. In fact, Sam Pendleton quite literally said that. But you look at the numbers for Wendell Moy, he does not allow sacks often.
Yeah, I think when I was researching him, I could be wrong, but I think he's given up 1 sack in his entire career, and I think he was second team all conference at some point.
That
Um,
sounds right.
and then Pimbleton, I heard that he didn't give up an entire sack during his time in Notre Dame. And one thing that's exciting about him is that he can play a little bit center, which Tennessee is going to need very badly this season, considering they lost Cooper Mays, who is also a leader of the team. And, you know, probably need to expect Nico to, I mean, not saying that Nico hasn't taken up a leadership role, but I mean, Cooper May seemed to be the heart and soul of the team at times, and he won't be an easy guy to replace. So it's nice to know that there's a guy that can rotate in and maybe try to fill his shoes.
Yeah, and it's something this team desperately needs, like you said, just because you could see it in 2023, the disconnect a little bit on offense over the first month of the season when Cooper Mays was battling through, I guess, his rehab just path to get back onto the field after that surgery he had in fall ball. But, you know, he missed the first 2 games. You're thinking he could come back for Florida. He doesn't come back for Florida. And that might have been a part of the issue with that loss. I'm not saying that was the entire reason for it, but you need a good center. You need a good, strong head at center in order to help out that offense. And you need one of those guys to pick up the slack this year, because it's a different looking offensive line this year for sure, because outside of Lance Hurd, who we'll see if he improves this season. I know he was kind of a punching bag last season for fans, but it's a different looking group, and offensive line chemistry. You can have great players, but if they're not connected, then it can be a disaster real quick.
So are you worried about Tennessee's inexperience on the offensive line this season, or do you think it's a good thing replacing these guys?
It's not a worry thing necessarily with me. It's just, you know, can you get this group of guys to gel? They have experience, just not together, is the big thing.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see for sure. I think offensive line is one of the big things that Tennessee needs to get right this season. I mean, especially if they want Nico to live up to the potential that everyone wants to say, like for him, like, you know, 5-star recruit. He on 3 put him ahead of Arch Manning at one point. I mean, there's a lot of things to be excited for with Nico, but could he ever live up to his potential if he doesn't have the right blockers in front of him? I'm not so sure. So hopefully the offensive line can get it all gelled and build that chemistry this season, so Nico has enough time to make decisions in the pocket and not have to force passes or run out of bounds.
I feel like that's a callback to a specific moment right there. Yeah, that was a moment that Tennessee fans would like to forget out there at Arkansas. But Jordan, give me 2 players on offense and defense that you were interested to see in this game on Saturday. I know we went over a lot of the offensive guys already, but defense is something we haven't necessarily touched on in this game.
Well, in terms of offense, I'm excited, like as I mentioned earlier, to see if Boo Carter gets any reps because I think Travis Hunter was a very exciting player to watch last season. It would be pretty insane to see a player like that on Tennessee. Not saying that he would be like that, but I mean, just the idea of a player playing both ways, it sounds really exciting. But outside of Boo Carter, I really want to see Bishop and see how that he does because I felt like times last year he showed a lot of potential. And I think he was battling injuries at one point earlier in the year.
Yep.
And then he ended up becoming healthy. But I thought that he was the clear cut running back too until the injuries. And then, Peyton Lewis helped carry some of the load later on. But I'm excited to see him because I think he has potential to be a starter. I mean, I don't know as much about Star Thomas, but from what I've seen, he seems like an exciting player. But Bishop, I'm really excited about. And as far as defense goes, I really want to see Joshua Josephs because I feel like he's been quietly a really good defender on Tennessee's team. And, with James Pierce, like coming in the season, many thought that he could have been the first overall draft pick. And not many people were talking about Josh Josephs. And I think he's got potential to come in and be an all SEC player once he gets more reps, which he will this season now that James Pierce is gone. And then, I want to see how the defensive backs do, not necessarily one specific player, but I want to see how the defensive backs do because, I mean, outside of McCoy, I feel like that was an area of issue for Tennessee.
And you're not going to have him in this game.
Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see who steps up in his place and to see how they perform. I mean, I know Tennessee got depleted from their wide receiver core in the offseason, like losing Squirrel White, losing Cam Selden, who wide receiver, running back kind of hybrid. I mean, Tennessee's lost some talent there. So it's going to be interesting to see the new wide receivers step in, see how good they are, and see if the corners can match up against them well, because I think Tennessee's going to have to defend the pass this season. I mean, because I don't think really anyone's worried about their front seven. I mean, even losing James Pierce, I mean, Tennessee's had so much depth that I think that they'll be just fine on that end.
You trust Rodney Garner more than anybody else to bring in good recruits out of this staff. And you mentioned running backs with Deshaun Bishop. One guy I was going to mention this year is Peyton Lewis is one that I'm looking at in this spring game. And last year was just kind of a feast or famine type year for him overall. Just not he got in at times, but you just didn't have consistency. He'd have like 8 or 9 yard gains on one play. And then, of course, you wouldn't see him for like 4 or 5 more possessions. And then he'd come back in, and then he'd lose like 2 or 3 yards. So that's got to change, and it's something that this group needs if it wants to stay strong at running back this year. And I think, too, with running backs, this was not Nico's offense last year. This was very much Dylan Sampson's offense. And it's not exactly how Tennessee fans envisioned it. I know that they went to the college football playoff anyway, but you got to find some other options here this year. Dylan Sampson's not walking through the door anymore. You got to find somebody that can carry the offense, and obviously Nico is who you look to first. I don't think there's a Dylan Sampson type running back in that backfield this year. So looking at Peyton Lewis pretty specifically in this game on offense, and then defensively, I'm just looking at the young kids primarily, especially on the defensive line. Guys like Jordan Ross, Isaiah Campbell was the other one that I really wanted to see on that defensive line. Of course, he was committed to Dabo Swinney and Clemson up until sometime last fall, decommitted, and wanted to choose between Tennessee and North Carolina. And, of course, Mac Brown loses his job, and Bill Belichick comes in there, which I don't think is a good hire for the record. And he chooses Tennessee, and he's the second highest rated recruit in this class for Tennessee, I believe, on 247. And he's out of North Carolina, which everybody that watches Tennessee football knows that North Carolina is critical to the recruiting pipeline. You've had some all-time great Tennessee players come out of the Tar Heel State in the past, and this is a guy that I don't know if it's going to be this year because you do have a lot of built-up depth in that D-line room, but you may see him next season. It's very possible.
Yeah, it's just crazy how Rodney Garner's been able to recruit at such a high level and keep getting these studs to keep coming in because you mentioned Jordan Ross. I almost forgot about him. I'm pretty sure maybe you would know. He was listed as a 5-star at one point, wasn't he?
Yeah, 5-star out of Alabama.
Yeah, and like didn't hear too much out of him except for the block punt situation or the running into the punter.
Yeah, that's just 2 memories that we've dug back out of the archive from that Arkansas game now.
A dagger to the heart for sure. But I'm excited to see what he can do. I mean, I didn't hear the best things from him online. I can't remember which coach it said, but they said that he needed to get basically just said that he needed to get better. And I'm like, well, hearing that from a former 5-star, that's not very reassuring to me, but I haven't lost faith in him yet. I mean, he had obviously people saw enough in him to rate him a 5-star. So hopefully he can put everything together this season and become a part of a dominant defensive line for Tennessee.
Yeah, and one thing too that I wanted to touch on just in the spring game on the defensive end, because this guy's status, I guess right now is a little bit up in the air as of whether or not he's going to be back next season. Ricky Gibson. It sounds like you could have one of those situations that you had with Mike Matthews and Boo Carter back in December, where you have a guy that is just looking to, I guess, restructure his NIL deal. I want to say contract, but Tennessee doesn't have a GM just yet, so that's not how that works, at least yet. But it's going to be interesting to watch. I know he was partaking in spring practice, and that's another thing that when we were just talking generically about spring games at the beginning, that's changed, is that it's not happened at Tennessee yet, but it's happened in other places with former Tennessee players where they have gone somewhere for a spring and then left to go somewhere else for the fall. You saw it happen with Tyler Barron and I believe Wesley Walker at Louisville last season, because Barron wound up at Miami for the actual season and Walker was up there at Michigan. So we'll see if it happens anytime soon. And it's entirely possible Tennessee loses somebody in the portal too. Of course, Elijah Herring was the one that bounced last year over to Memphis. I don't know where he is right now because he, I believe, transferred out of Memphis.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's just the era of college football that we're living in now with all these guys moving around.
Do you think that his brother Caleb will join him?
I don't know. I don't think so. I felt like we would have heard something by now if that was the case, because Elijah left last year and Caleb played a little bit last season for Tennessee. I'm sure he'll see the field more now, but some of these guys moving on, guys like Amari Thomas, Omar Norman Lott, James Pierce, all those dudes that were here last season but are now out of eligibility. So very much a possibility that we see him on the field this year. But again, you never know. These kids can transfer on a whim now. That's just how it is.
Yeah, it's a different world in college football for sure. And I feel like that's why we've seen a lot of these upsets, like Northern Illinois over Notre Dame. And Notre Dame went to the national championship. And, I mean, nowadays, these lesser these schools that aren't as big as like these SEC teams, they are getting 4 or 5-star recruits just because, money, and like they're not seeing the field at the school that they're at. And, it's dangerous. It's dangerous playing against some of these schools that you wouldn't expect to be competitive against you.
It's like kind of a trickle down, I guess you could say, of guys that didn't end up making the field at one school. Because you do see 5-stars that don't make it at these places, and then they wind up at like an FCS or group of 5 school just as a result. So that's about all I got on the spring game. You got anything else, Jordan?
No, just that I'm excited to see what takes place and, hopefully get to see some things from the younger guys on the team, see if they will be ready to contribute during the season. I don't know. I'm just excited for it.
All right. So with that, we can go ahead and pivot over to the NFL for a little bit, because there are some balls that you need to keep up with in the NFL, because you got a few that could be drafted this season. And we are, just over 2 weeks now until draft day? It's fast approaching. And of course, I've been looking all over through the mocks just to see who is projected where at this time. And, I don't get in through the paywalled content or anything. So I've just been scouring for 3 to 5 round mock drafts online. And I found a 5-round one finally this week. And it's got some names of interest on here, 4 in particular, if we'd like to examine that. I forget, what was the guy's name? It was something Reuter. I think Chad Reuter of NFL Network put out this draft. And you've got 4 guys projected to go in the first 5 rounds. And to no surprise, James Pierce is the first one on here. But he is not going in the first round. In fact, he's not even going near the top of the second round. He's going number 53 overall to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Interesting. Because like I mentioned earlier, almost every single mock draft, I remember one day I was bored and I was just like, I'm going to look up 2025 mock draft during the beginning of the season last year. Almost every single one of the websites that I clicked on had him going number 1 overall to the Panthers. And I don't know what has been going on. I feel like there hasn't been much information that's came out, right? Like I was kind of blindsided by all the character issues and everything, because I didn't hear anything about that beforehand. Like I know he had trouble with the law at one point at Tennessee, but didn't hear much after that. Do you know anything about his supposed character issues or where that stem from?
Yeah, so there's a couple things going on here potentially. As for the character issues, from what I know, there was some random account put this out on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it now, about how we've got a guy that has character issues coming out of Tennessee that you should not draft. And the only thing that I can think of when he was here at Tennessee was, like you said, did have a little bit of trouble with the law at one point. I think if I can remember correctly, it was something about disobeying orders during a traffic stop, like trying to flee or something, which obviously you can't do that. But that's the only thing I can think of here. Like outside of that, the only other reason I can think of his stock falling off is just the fact that he just didn't have as explosive of a season as maybe these mocks were thinking last season. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Jadeveon Clowney at South Carolina circa 2013. He has that great season in 2012, the year before, but he was fine in 2013. He just didn't shine necessarily. I don't think Pierce slipped off to that level necessarily, although I guess Clowney was still a number 1 overall pick. So at the end of the day, it didn't really matter. But I don't know what exactly happened this season. Maybe it's just like, he had Tyler Barron at defensive end last year, and he ends up transferring out to Miami. It's like having a basketball team with a couple of great players on it, right? One guy gets shut down one night and then another one goes off. And he was kind of missing that this year, I think. He didn't really have that explosive guy on the other end. It wasn't like they put him and Josephs out there simultaneously. So, yeah, it's an interesting thought for sure. But going all the way down to 53 is kind of shocking, because after the combine, the mocks, the highest I saw them projecting Pierce was number 12. And those jumped way up and down, all the way down to 32, back up to like 19, and then out of the first round. 53 is a new low from what I've seen. And I think I did see the Buccaneers taking him in the first round, but I think there's something about just swings and misses with the Buccaneers in the first round, and that's maybe why they're not trying to take a defensive end and why Pierce could fall out potentially. Obviously, he's no longer the top edge in this draft now because Abdul Carter is who the Giants are after right now. But it is a little bit of a surprise. I think he can still see the field quickly. It's just kind of wild that he started off at number 1 going into last season and has slipped all the way down to 53.
Yeah, I feel like I just have a hard time believing that he would fall to the second round. I know that he didn't have as dominant of a season as he did last year, but I feel like some team's going to take the risk on him in the first round, maybe midway through or something, but I just don't see him falling to the second round based on his potential. I feel like NFL coaches can get the most out of him as long as that he's willing to, and maybe those character issue things are true. I haven't seen any reason to believe why he has character issues, but of course I'm not on the team. But I mean, assuming that he is a guy that's willing to learn and to put in that effort, I mean, I feel like the sky's the limit for him. So it is shocking to see him drop to the second round for sure.
Yeah. You know, I'm just thinking back here. The Tennessee Titans drafted Jeffrey Simmons in 2019, and there was this whole character concern thing with him, although I think what happened there was a little more justifiable than this, although there's just not a whole lot of basis for this. It's just a narrative that has been spun up, and I think some NFL teams are just starting to take it seriously. I don't know what the basis is still outside of what I mentioned already with the one routine traffic stop here. But of course, you know, the 40 time is great. 440 is that's as good as it got this year at the combine with the defensive lineman. So that alone should help him. And he's got that twitch about him that not very many of these defensive linemen have. He's got a great combo of size and strength.
Yeah, and we got to see that a lot this past season. I mean, sometimes he jumped the gun a little bit too early. I recall a couple of false starts, but I mean, I can't remember which game it was, but he timed it up so perfectly. As soon as the ball moved even just a smidge, he was already out of his stance, ready to go get the quarterback. I mean, that's something that you just can't coach right there. You can't coach that kind of explosiveness. And I mean, I think he's got the tools to put everything together and be good. But you mentioned 40-yard dash. Another Tennessee player that had a really good 40-yard dash, Dante Thornton. I was reading earlier today that there's only been 2 6'5" receivers that have ran a 4.35 or lower. And those 2 receivers are Calvin Johnson and Dante Thornton. What do you think about that?
I did see that on Calvin Johnson. That's elite company, obviously. That's a good thing to be a part of. And that's actually a good little pivot point because Thornton is actually the next guy that is projected to go in this mock draft that I saw earlier. But yes, that's showcasing his versatility as a receiver because obviously 6'5" indicates you can go up and get the 50-50 ball, but they've made it a point ever since he's been here that speed is a real asset for him as a receiver. So Thornton was projected to go number 92 overall to the Tennessee Titans.
Sounds interesting. It would be cool to see him playing there. Yeah, and the Titans definitely need a receiver.
I feel like I need to throw my 2 cents in here because I do choose to root for the Titans still, despite the fact that they've caused me misery for a lot of my life. They are a franchise that needs some continuity, needs some constants. They need some stars. They don't have much of that right now. They've had 4 GM and head coach combos in as many seasons, which is insane. They sold all their stars in free agency and in the draft back in 2022. And probably the biggest loss of all, which the Tennessee people is not a loss at all because he's just joining the Vol Network. Mike Keith, although they did announce today that Taylor Zarzour is his successor, so congrats to Taylor. But back to what I was saying earlier, this team needs some continuity, and they're trying to get it in Cam Ward, and he needs all the help he can get, both in the draft and in free agency, which they did not do much for him. By the way, only thing they got in free agency at wide receiver is Van Jefferson. Shout out Ravenwood High School in Williamson County.
Hey,
both
I hate to interrupt you, but I actually played against him in high school twice. Knocked us out of the playoffs.
I figured you did. He's also a Florida Gator, so we don't love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they didn't get much in free agency, and then you look at the two things they retained this year at receiver. You've got Calvin Ridley, who has not been the same since the whole gambling incident. You've got what's his name? Treylon Burks, who is just synonymous with the downfall of the Tennessee Titans. The moment John Robinson shipped off A.J. Brown to the Eagles, that's one of the moments a lot of Titans fans circle as to why everything went downhill from there. So all that to say, you need some receivers in this draft. I've seen Luther Burden mocked, I think, in like the second round of the Titans. There is a mutual interest between Dante Thornton and the Tennessee Titans right now. They're having a top 30 visit on April 15th, I believe, which is essentially just a recruiting visit for NFL prospects, for those of you who may not know. But yeah, it's a guy that hopefully can stay on the field more than he did here at Tennessee. Year one in the system, he's kind of buried. Heupel didn't play more than 4 receivers, so he was the 4th guy pretty much coming into the game for the most part at the beginning of the season. And of course, when Brew went down in 2023 in the South Carolina game, he needed to step up, and you saw flashes of it. You saw him make a big catch against Florida in the swamp. You saw him make a really nice catch against Kentucky up there in that win. And then he caught that touchdown pass at Missouri, which was also the same play that ended his season because he also had a gruesome lower body injury. Year 2 in the system, it's almost more of the same. Like he didn't have as bad of an injury, but he was playing hurt for a lot of the season in 2024, and it felt like once a game, every home game, he would have one terrific catch, and you just didn't see it from him consistently. And I don't know, quarterback play could be part of that, but you just hope it's more consistent. Not too. I think Cam Ward is obviously a more proven quarterback at this point than Nico, but again, NFL is a completely different game.
Oh yeah, and we've seen that over and over again. Like how many college greats have went into the NFL and did not perform to their standard. Like Kellen Moore, for example, who has been quite the coordinator recently in the NFL. A lot of attention.
Well, he's a head coach now.
Yeah. Head coach now, finally. But I remember when he played at Boise State, he was one of the best college quarterbacks I've ever seen, and then go to the NFL. And I don't even think he got drafted in like the first 4 rounds. I could be wrong, but I mean, not all of those guys end up panning out. But I think Thornton to the Titans would be very interesting. I think that would be good for him to stay in Tennessee. And I mean, the Titans need some receivers, and he's got the speed and everything. I mean, all they need is for him to get open one time deep, and then you got a touchdown right there. I mean, he doesn't need to be wide receiver 1 or number 2 to have an effect on the team. So I think that would be a good place for Thornton to land.
All right, 2 more that are projected to go in the top 5 rounds here. So keep in mind, this is top 5, not including 6 or 7. So again, there's a chance somebody gets drafted down there. And I have a feeling one will, but we won't talk about him in this because, again, he's not a part of it. 113 in the 4th round to the San Francisco 49ers, Dylan Sampson. is
Mm,
projected to go there. I like this one. I actually really like this one.
I think it's a really good one too. I mean, because, you've seen what Christian McCaffrey's been able to do there. You've seen just so much talent come out of the 49ers. And plus, like, I mean, there's so much talent surrounding him at like receiver, at quarterback, and on defense. I mean, he could just go in there and contribute to the team and make them a better team just from the jump. I think Dylan Sampson's like been flying on under the radar this season, and I don't know what it is. Maybe because Tennessee ran him so much that they just that scouts just thought that maybe he's like a one-trick pony, or I don't know what it is, but I mean, he was SEC Offensive Player of the Year, and I would like to think, I mean, the 49ers have been to 2 Super Bowls in recent memory. I mean, they'll probably be there again here soon. I think that he could plug in and, help out Brock Purdy and company, and then, get to play alongside Jawan Jennings, who almost was Super Bowl MVP here recently, if things would have went different. But yeah, I think Dylan Sampson could fit in there nicely. I mean, just because of the sheer talent that like you could just forget about him, plug him in, and then he could get you a couple good plays.
Yeah, and injury prone Christian McCaffrey is going to go down again soon.
Mm-hmm.
He was injury prone with the Panthers. He obviously had a streak of good luck with the 49ers, but we all know him too well. It's bound to end. Right now, I guess his biggest competition with McCaffrey being out in that scenario, if he's drafted there, would be Isaac Guerendo and Patrick Taylor, which I think he could both get around for some reps. And right now, the biggest knock on Dylan Sampson is his ability as a pass catcher. And that's something that he really wanted to prove during Pro Day here at Tennessee. He just did not get to run the 40 in the combine either. I noticed it wasn't that he chose not to, because some guys choose not to, but he said they were just running out of time when he was talking to us and his availability. So, yeah, that's what I got on Dylan Sampson. But overall, I do really like this fit potentially. So one more here, and that is also in the 4th round. You've got Omar Norman Lott going to the Cardinals at 135. Now, this is an interesting one because the Cardinals need interior defensive linemen, but for the most part, it sounds like they're going to draft one earlier in the round. I think Darius Robinson of Missouri is the one that they're targeting in that 1st round. So he would most likely be a depth piece, and I would imagine that's going to be the case anywhere he winds up. Did see him projected to the Titans at one point, although that's been probably a month. So, but if he gets drafted that high, great for him. It's these transfers leave kind of complicated legacies now. I feel like, the fans don't have quite the attachment to the player as they do guys that are here 4 years. And
Unless you're Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, that's kind of the anomaly right now. It's kind of a weird relationship because you like them, but you don't like them as much as you like some other guys.
Yeah, for sure. But I think the Cardinals could be a good pick. Like, I think he could be a good pick for the Cardinals because I'm pretty sure they picked up Calais Campbell recently, which
Yeah.
I mean, he's about to
38.
leave the league. Yeah, he's pushing 40 easily, and he'll be out of the league here soon. But he could provide a lot of knowledge to Norman Lott and, coach him up, and maybe he could be the next generation for the Cardinals. But have to wait and see. I remember before the season, they had him higher than that in the mock drafts. Like I saw one that had him in the 1st round, which I was a little shocked with. But yeah, I mean, I think the Cardinals would be good for him. I mean, playing behind Calais Campbell, and, they need interior defensive linemen, like you said. I mean, I don't think he would change the team significantly, but I mean, he could be a good like role player for the team for sure.
Yeah. So that's all I've got on the mock draft front today. As you probably noticed, I did not mention Cooper Mays at all in there, and that's because he's not projected to go in the first 5 rounds, which his brother wasn't either, if I remember correctly. But at the same time, he's a top 3 center in college football last season. So it is
He was
a
a
little
finalist
surprising.
He was a finalist for the Remington, wasn't he?
He was, which does make it a little bit surprising to see him not in those top 5 rounds in this mock draft. I don't know. Maybe it's an injury concern because the Mays brothers are a little bit injury prone, just from what we know. But that's all I've got on that. As for him not being in there, one more thing before we get out of here, because we've only got 5 minutes left. Time flies when you're having fun. There was a trade this week of interest to Vols fans. Joe Milton III and Josh Dobbs will not be together in New England. Milton has been traded with, I believe, a 7th round pick to the Dallas Cowboys in exchange for a 5th rounder to the New England Patriots.
Yeah, it's interesting to see Joe Milton going around again. I see that since he's been in the league, seemingly every NFL fan's been really excited about him, and they're like, why isn't he starting on the Patriots? Why isn't he doing this? Why isn't he doing that? I mean, I think Tennessee fans know a little bit what to expect with Joe Milton, and so did Michigan fans, the same Michigan fans that warned Tennessee fans not to get too excited. I think Joe Milton's a great guy. Like what he did to stick around the team and continue to play at Tennessee even after Hendon Hooker took the job. I mean, I think it spoke a lot about his character. I could see Joe Milton being a good leader, but the accuracy is just the one thing that he needs to dial in.
Well, the funny thing is, I think the one game he started this past year, he was actually very accurate.
Yes.
Against the Bills, and they won that game, keep in mind. Something that I thank them for as a Titans guy. Both him and Derek Barnett of the Texans, also a Tennessee guy, for that scoop and score against the Titans to seal the deal for the number 1 pick. So
yeah,
Vols helping Vols to a degree. We love to see that.
100%.
But, more on Joe Milton. I don't say this as an insult, and I don't think I've ever said this about a quarterback before, but there is not a guy that is more tailor-made to be an NFL backup than Joe Milton. Because, again, you said it. He's a great guy. He's a great guy on and off the field. He's kind of exciting as a player. The rocket arm we all know about, Bazooka Joe. But when the lights get too bright for him, they do get too bright from time to time, as we see. I think it's good with backing up Dak because, Dak is a guy that has dealt with some injuries in the past. They got rid of both Cooper Rush and Trey Lance this offseason, so they needed a backup quarterback in the worst possible way, and they got Milton, so that's at least something to give your fans. It's something that your fans can look forward to while your starter is hurt. And, good for him getting out there.
Yeah, and we've seen how Joe Milton's performed, like with little film on him. Like when he stepped in coming out of the backup role, he's shined like he did in the Orange Bowl a couple of years back, and like how he did with the Patriots this year. And like you see a lot of time in the NFL, a starter will go down and you're like, oh, we're doomed. But then the backup comes in the next week and will shred the defense for 350 yards. And it's because there's not much film on him. You don't know what to expect. You're planning on playing against Joe Burrow all week. And then all of a sudden you got another guy coming in, taking his place, and then you don't know what to expect. So I think Joe Milton, like you said, could be a great option for any team as a backup quarterback because of his athletic potential and because of his leadership. I mean, all you need is for him to come in one play after a quarterback gets hurt and just uncork a bomb. And then all of a sudden the game's changed. And yeah.
One thing you mentioned there too about the Orange Bowl, and that was, I think, some of his best days as a quarterback in Tennessee was being the backup behind Hendon Hooker, because obviously when he got the start here, they were not super excited. The Tennessee fans weren't. You beat Bowling Green by 32, but that game was not pretty on his part. Obviously, you saw what happened in the Pittsburgh game there at the beginning. Hendon Hooker was clearly the better guy as that game went on, despite the fact that Joe got injured. But when he came off the bench in mop-up duty, as I guess in his second season on the job, he really, really progressed his game, I felt like. And you saw him nail some throws that he just was not hitting on in that first year. And you saw it in both of those games. Vandy, you did a little bit. It was really rainy in that game, so I don't really count that. But obviously the Clemson game, he had a couple nice throws as well. But then as a starter in 2023, it was just more of the same. So I definitely feel like he's tailor-made as a backup in that regard, just based on what we've seen at Tennessee, more so than he is a starter. And then also it may just be a practice player thing too, right? Like in practices and the little that we get to see, I thought he was sharper than Nico. That may not be the case in the game, but not everybody responds to practice the same way as they do the game. That's just how it is.
Yeah, there's some practice warriors out there that never see time on the field. But like, yeah, Joe Milton, you actually reminded me of something that I almost forgot. I think it's the 2022 season. Pretty sure he finished with roughly 1,000 yards passing and like eight or so touchdowns, and that's as a backup. So like every time he's came in, I mean, albeit Tennessee was blowing out teams during those times, but like whenever he stepped in and played, coming in as a backup, he's done good. And maybe it's because the pressure's too high for him being a starting quarterback. I don't know what's going through his head, but I mean, just to know that you have that good of a player in terms of talent just sitting on your bench, just waiting. I mean, you could be killing a team all day with short passes and your quarterback goes down, and then they're like, okay, well, we've been used to these short passes and runs all day. Well, now Joe Milton's stepping in, and then bam, down the field, you got a touchdown right there. I don't know. I'm excited to see what he does. And it's been very interesting seeing how much he's been hyped up. But I feel like it's been a story that's been repeated over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. We've seen the movie before.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the movie before. And that's just, I don't know. It was something I heard somebody call this the Milton cycle once upon a time, where you see the guy, you see him in the locker room, you're impressed by him, just his physique. Then you see his throws in practice, you're like, oh wow, he can really sling it. And then you see what kind of guy he is, and you're like, wow, I really want to see this guy succeed. And then he gets out onto the field, and it's like biting into an oatmeal raisin cookie that you thought was a chocolate chip cookie. That's just how it is.
Yeah. But best of luck to him for sure. And it'd be good for Cowboys to have a good backup to come in for Dak, because Dak probably will get injured at some point in the season. So we probably will get to see a little bit of Joe Milton.
All right, Jordan, you got anything else?
Just that I'm excited for the spring game this Saturday. Everyone should tune in, get excited for the Volunteers, show up and show out. And yeah, been exciting first episode.
Yeah, very exciting. Thank you to all of you who tuned in tonight. I think we had several on the YouTube show up, a lot of comments. We appreciate y'all for the support. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Tennessee at the Voice of College Football. In the future, tell your friends about it, tell your family about it, tell everybody you see about it. We appreciate all the support we can get. That's going to do it for episode 1 of Tennessee Volunteers Live. For Jordan Binkley, I'm Tucker Harlan. We'll see you guys next week.